Street, avenue, boulevard, road. There's no rule. That's the honest answer to the argument you've had in a car about what separates a street from an avenue from a boulevard. America does have one nationwide postal standard, USPS, Publication 28, and all it does is tell the post office how to abbreviate. Street becomes ST, avenue becomes AVE. That's it. You've heard avenues run perpendicular to streets. True in Manhattan, where avenues run north to south at about 100 feet wide, and the streets crossing them run east to west at 60. Drive to Denver, and it's exactly backwards. Portland, Oregon actually put it in the city code. East to west is a street, and north to south is an avenue. Other codes define a lane as a private street the city doesn't maintain, so that cozy word on your mail can mean nobody's plowing it. But names aren't types. What matters is what the street actually does. The local, residential street. Every street has two jobs: move you through or let you stop. The more driveways, crossings, and front doors it serves, the worse it gets at moving traffic fast. The local street is what happens when a road gives up on mobility completely. Yours is probably 20 to 30 feet of pavement, one or two unmarked lanes, posted at 25. That's the design working. Local streets are roughly 69% of American road mileage, but carry only about 13% of the driving. 2/3 of our roads handle 1/8 of our traffic. There's a middle tier too, the collector, which gathers local traffic and feeds the big roads. You can't name a famous one because collector is a job title on a spreadsheet rather than a shape. The arterial. The arterial is the 4 to 6 lane road outside your grocery store. Posted 35 to 50, signalized intersections instead of ramps, doing mobility and access at once while pretending that's fine. It isn't fine. Non-interstate arterials account for roughly 60% of pedestrian fatalities in the U.S., not the interstate, the road you cross to get a burrito. One Texas study found each additional mile of arterial was associated with roughly 10% more multi-vehicle crashes and about 9% more pedestrian crashes. Aiding arterial mileage doesn't move risk around, it manufactures more. US 19 in Pasco County, Florida lands on America's highest risk corridor lists over and over. 6 lanes, strip retail, and a posted speed that treats walking as a hobby for the reckless. The freeway. The freeway is what a road looks like when it refuses to provide access at all. No driveways, no crosswalks, no signals. Technically, the difference is access control. A freeway has full control of access. An expressway has partial control, meaning it can still have intersections where you stop. That one rule changes everything. Once access happens only at interchanges, the road can keep traffic moving without somebody turning into a gas station every few hundred feet. Definitions vary by state, which is how California ends up calling nearly everything a freeway. Here's the payoff. Interstates are about 1.1% of American road mileage and carry roughly a quarter of all the miles Americans drive. Freeway doesn't mean toll-free, it means full access control. A freeway picks mobility and gives up your front door. A local street picks access and gives up speed. The Stroad. The Stroad. 6 lanes, 45 miles an hour, and a drive-through entrance every 200 feet. You've spent years of your life on these without knowing they had a name. The word comes from engineer Charles Marone of Strong Towns, who popularized it by 2013. His analogy nails it. A futon is an uncomfortable couch that's also an uncomfortable bed. A Stroad moves cars too slowly to be a decent route and too fast to be a decent place, so it fails both jobs at once. Undivided urban and suburban corridors, each extra driveway per mile is associated with roughly 0.11 to 0.18 more crashes per million vehicle miles. Stack 40 of those in a mile, and the math stops being subtle. Be honest, though. Stroad isn't an official classification. You won't find it in any engineering standard. It's a criticism invented by a critic, and that's why it matters. Nobody had a word for this failure, so it kept getting built. Drop the worst Stroad in your town in the comments. I want to see how bad these get. Main Street, High Street. Main Street is built to make you stop, not pass through. Buildings pressed against the sidewalk, parking on the street, 15 to 25 miles an hour. Shops downstairs and apartments above. Roughly 40 to 60 feet of roadway, less than half a Stroad. Its mobility is terrible, not a bug. A main street isn't trying to move you through, it's trying to be the place you stop. That friction is the feature. Parked cars, short blocks, storefronts, crossings, and people entering and leaving all tell drivers the same thing. This is somewhere to arrive, not somewhere to blast through. You don't need those extra lanes as badly as engineers think. Some 4-lane corridors, carrying up to about 25,000 vehicles a day, work fine as 3 lanes after a road diet, because a center turn lane fixes the actual bottleneck. State Street in Madison does this, so does SE Division Street in Portland. You see the same logic on British high streets. The Multiway Boulevard. A multi-way boulevard separates movement from access instead of forcing both into the same lanes. Rather than blending fast traffic with local access, it separates them and puts landscaped medians in between. Fast through lanes down the center. Slow frontage lanes outside for parking and anyone actually stopping on that block. 2 different speeds in one right-of-way, kept apart by trees instead of hope. Medians, trees, side lanes, and crossings force drivers to read the street instead of treating it like one open corridor. San Francisco's Octavia Boulevard opened in September 2005 on the footprint of a demolished freeway spur, with 2 single-lane frontage roads flanking median divided through lanes. That right-of-way is about 211 feet wide. Brooklyn's Ocean Parkway is the older version at roughly the same width, built in the 1870s. We knew how to do this before cars existed, then forgot on purpose. The alley. The alley is the smallest thing in the hierarchy and the only one designed to be ugly. Trash pickup, deliveries, garage doors. A commercial alley can be about 10 feet of roadway inside a 20-foot right-of-way. The point is pulling ugly work off your front street. Then it got a second act nobody planned. Vancouver launched its Laneway House program in 2009, and by 2018 had issued more than 3,300 permits for small homes on the back of ordinary single-family lots. Toronto legalized laneway suites in June 2018, turning roughly 2,400 public laneways into housing supply without rezoning a single neighborhood. Melbourne went the other way. Hosier Lane and de Graves Street are now among the most photographed streets in Australia. Toronto looked at 2,400 alleys and saw housing policy. Your city's got the same alleys and probably still sees garbage. The Woonerf shared street. The Woonerf has no curbs, none. Dutch for living yard, and the most radical street here, because it deletes the thing you've assumed was mandatory your whole life. No curb, no lane markings, no sidewalk. Pedestrians use the full width. People can linger almost anywhere, and cars are legally guests held to walking pace, which in Dutch practice means about 9 miles an hour. Nothing enforces it but the street itself, through planters, chicanes, and paving that makes speeding physically unpleasant. The origin is my favorite story in urban planning. Residents in Delft in the late 1960s got sick of traffic and began altering their own street to force drivers to slow down. They were redesigning the street before the government had a name for it. The government looked at the results and wrote it into national standards in 1976. Roughly 2 million Dutch residents live on one today. One honest objection. Blind and partially sighted advocates push back hard on curbless design because the curb is the thing they navigate by. The Pedestrian Mall. Removing cars doesn't save a failing downtown. America built more than 200 pedestrian malls to prove it. The first opened in Kalamazoo, Michigan in August 1959, designed by Victor Gruen for about $60,000. Roughly 50,000 people turned up, and every struggling downtown took notes. By the early 2000s, nearly 90% had failed and reopened to traffic. Kalamazoo itself put cars back on 2 blocks in 1998. The survivors share a pattern you can spot. Pearl Street in Boulder, 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, small cities, a college, or tourists, something already generating foot traffic before the cars left. Then there's Copenhagen's Stroad, which worked because it stayed embedded in a dense, walkable city instead of floating in a parking lot. Pedestrianizing a street doesn't create demand for walking. It only reveals demand already there. The stepped street. Some streets are staircases. Not metaphorically. There are public rights-of-way too steep for any vehicle, so that they got built as stairs, and they're still legally streets. Pittsburgh has more than anywhere else in the country. Bob Regan's survey around 2000 documented 739 sets of public steps and about 24,108 vertical feet of climb. Roughly 2/3 sit in low and moderate income neighborhoods, which tells you who was expected to walk to work up a hillside. San Francisco has the Filbert steps climbing Telegraph Hill toward Coit Tower. They're beloved, expensive to maintain, and most will never be accessible to anyone who can't climb. Still, stack Pittsburgh's stairways end to end, and you get roughly 24,000 vertical feet. That's taller than Denali, the highest mountain in North America, and every one of those steps is legally a street. Tell me which type your block actually is. Subscribe if you want more of these.